Monica had a catastrophic run of luck in life. Not only did she live in a shelter, where she hardly had any friends, but also the people who came to look at children for adoption never paid attention to her, even when Monica put all her efforts into it. The only close person to her, Nanny Melissa, tried to find parents for the girl, but for some reason, nobody wanted to take the modest and quiet girl. And Monica, having lost all hope of finding a family, patiently awaited her adulthood. Time passed slowly. Some people left, others came, the staff at the shelter changed, but the only constant remained, the girl Monica with dark hair braided in pigtails and Nanny Melissa, whose face never lost its kind and somewhat sad smile. Just before graduation, Melissa told Monica about how she ended up in the shelter. "You were about a year old when you came to us. I remember that day. It was spring outside. The snow had just melted and it was getting warmer. They brought you in on Monica's police car. They told us they took a little girl from the gypsies, whose camp was by the river, and they said they found you on the shore. Whether it's true or not, no one was really looking for you. And you stayed with us. And you don't know anything about my parents?" Monica looked hopefully into the nanny's eyes. Melissa sighed and stroked Monica's head. "Absolutely nothing. Neither about parents nor about other relatives. It feels like you came here from another planet." After graduation, Monica entered medical school. She was also given a small apartment by the state in one of the new buildings. And she got a job as a janitor at the regional hospital. There she met her future husband, Thomas, who worked there as a therapist. Thomas was 7 years older than her. Always polite, with a pleasant face, and with attentive and slightly tired eyes. She immediately liked Thomas. At work, Thomas was always surrounded by female attention. Several young nurses fussed over him. And there were rumors that Thomas had a romance with the beauty Renata, who worked as an endocrinologist. But despite everything, Thomas chose Monica. When the hospital staff found out about their meetings after work, the nurses sighed disappointedly and gave Monica, who scrubbed the floors, envious looks. "What on earth did he see in her?" said Nina, who flirted with Thomas more than others. "Without laughter, you can't even look at her. Thin as a herring, and she dresses in whatever she finds. She's from a shelter." Marta, her former rival in the competition for Thomas, chuckled in response. "They're all like that, a little quirky." Monica overheard their conversation but pretended not to understand what was being discussed. "All right, ladies, back to work." Thomas interrupted the nurses as he appeared. Then he approached Monica. "I have urgent news for you." He waited for the nurses to disappear from Clarissa's sight and continued. "We're having dinner at my parents' house tonight. Sort of a meet and greet, you know." Monica was stunned by this news. If Thomas decided to introduce her to his parents, it meant things were getting serious, and a wedding was on the horizon. That evening, Thomas drove a dressed-up Monica to his parents' house. And they immediately bombarded the girl with a bunch of uncomfortable questions. Thomas's father, Victor, a professor of anatomy, seemed to watch every move the girl made, putting her in an awkward position. "So you grew up in a shelter," he said, wiping his glasses while keeping his eyes fixed on Monica. "That's bad. Very bad. The absence of parents greatly affects a person's personality." Thomas's mother, Clarissa, a former cardiologist, supported her husband despite her son's accusing look. "Yes, it's not good," she confirmed. "And why, if it's not a secret, was no one willing to adopt you?" Monica choked on her lemonade unexpectedly and almost dropped the glass from her hands. Her face turned crimson with embarrassment, and she felt the cool air around her turning into stifling heat. "I don't know," she mumbled, trying not to cry. It wasn't up to me. Victor, apparently tired of discussing Monica's personality, hastened to change the subject and began talking to his son about some medical matters. Meanwhile, Clarissa turned to Monica and started asking her about her interests and other ephemeral things, trying to alleviate the tension that hung in the air. But the tension inside Monica only grew and grew. It seemed to her that the spacious and luxuriously furnished apartment was closing in on her with every passing second, and she was about to be crushed like a little spider. "Excuse me, I need to go," Monica exclaimed, gasping for air and sweating. "I have to finish my coursework." She jumped up from the table, and Thomas followed her. He escorted her to the entrance and offered her a ride, but Monica declined. "I'll take a taxi," she muttered, gulping down the fresh cold air greedily. "See you tomorrow." Thomas grabbed her hand and pulled her towards him. "Don't mind my folks," he smiled, trying to reassure Monica. "They sometimes get on my nerves so much that I don't visit them for 6 months. They have such characters, you know." Monica cautiously freed herself from his embrace and, wishing Thomas a good night, headed to the bus stop. All she wanted was to get away from Thomas's parents' house. Nobody in Monica's life had ever evoked such vivid dislike in her as they did. And she really didn't want to ever encounter them again under any circumstances. Fortunately, Thomas no longer invited her to his parents' house. And soon after proposing to her, he brought her to his apartment. The wedding took place 6 months later. By that time, Monica was already 3 months pregnant. Even the spacious wedding dress she wore on her wedding day couldn't hide the roundness of her belly. Sitting at the festive table, Monica felt the disapproving glances of Thomas's parents, and she shivered as if from the cold. The cold also emanated from the nurses Nina and Martha, who were invited to the wedding. They looked at the newlyweds with such envy and malice that the smiles on their faces resembled grimaces. The only bright spot for Selina at this celebration was Melissa sitting next to her. She sincerely rejoiced that her ward had found her happiness and toasted one after another, constantly interrupting the slightly tipsy host. "I wish I could be in your place," Melissa whispered to Monica, taking advantage of the moment. "I once got married too. But it was so long ago that I can hardly believe it now." Monica, who had never been interested in the old nanny's family life before, suddenly became curious. "What happened to your husband?" she asked. "And where are your children?" Melissa smiled softly, and Monica noticed her eyes moistening. "Let's not talk about that now," the elderly woman waved off. "Today is your celebration. No need to cloud it with old memories." After the wedding, Monica continued to work at the hospital for some time before going on maternity leave. Her belly kept growing, and Thomas suspected that she might be having twins or even triplets. "In any case, we're prepared for it," he said, showing Monica the new nursery, cluttered with various clothes, diaper boxes, and other essentials. "I hope our children will like it here," Thomas continued, placing his hands on Monica's belly. "I really tried to please him." And then the ultrasound indeed showed twins. Monica was a bit bewildered, but Thomas was beaming with joy. "See, I told you so. I'll go call my parents and make them happy. Hopefully, now they'll understand how wrong they were about you. You're the best wife in the world. And I love you, Monica, more than anything." Thomas kissed her, and Monica, closing her eyes, dreamed of how they would soon live as one big happy family. And in due time, she gave birth to 2 babies, sturdy twin boys. When the midwife showed them to Monica, she couldn't believe her eyes. The babies had dark skin, as if someone had dipped them in chocolate. The delivery room staff were also surprised, and the female doctor suggested that it might be a temporary phenomenon. I also had a baby who was born with darker skin, she hurried to reassure Monica. But after a few days, everything returned to normal. It's probably due to a lack of enzymes. At that moment, Monica was less concerned about the color of the children's skin than about her husband's reaction. She asked the doctor to keep the children under observation for a while and not to show them to her husband. If there are no other problems, we won't be able to hide them for long, the doctor warned her. It's better for you to somehow explain everything to your husband and prepare him. These are definitely my children, exclaimed Thomas when he saw the two little ones, reaching out their black arms with light palms to him. Listen, if this is some kind of joke, it's not funny. He stepped back from Monica and the midwife and almost fell. Monica handed the twins to the midwife and asked her to leave her alone with her husband. I never thought you were capable of this, Thomas said when the midwife disappeared behind the door. I was a fool to believe you, running around like crazy to the shops, preparing everything, and you. You're such a snake, Monica. He looked at his wife with such venomous eyes that the girl's heart almost stopped. These are your children, she exclaimed, defending herself as best she could. I've always been faithful to you. Thomas turned away and approached the window. My parents were right about you, he said slowly, savoring each word. I defended you all this time, but they were right. He sat down on the windowsill and looked bitterly as some man happily hugged his just discharged wife. I don't know who you got pregnant by, but you'd better seek their help. I'm filing for divorce. Today. Monica clenched her teeth and slid off the bed. No, she whispered, extending a pale and trembling hand to Thomas. Don't leave me, you can't. Thomas paused at the door and turned around. I can, he said softly. Goodbye. Thomas left and slammed the door loudly. Monica rushed after him but stumbled and fell. You can't, she repeated and fainted. The medics who rushed in at the noise brought her to her senses and gave her a sedative, but it didn't help much. All evening and all night, Monica lay on the bed, crying. Melissa came to pick up the girl from the hospital. She drove her and the children home. And Monica asked the nanny to stay with her for a while. Melissa agreed. There wasn't much for her to do at home anyway. And Monica, after what she had been through, could do anything with herself and the children. But why do you have children like that? Melissa asked, rocking the crib with the sleeping biracial twins. You're fair-skinned, Thomas too, and the kids are dark-skinned. It's kind of strange. Monica looked at the nanny with regret and sobbed. Well, there you go too, she said in a strained voice. I thought at least you would believe me. She covered her face with her hands, and Melissa gently stroked her back. I believe you, I do, she smiled. It's just a little strange and surprising. But Monica wasn't in the mood for surprise. Thomas left her, and she didn't know how to raise two children. With work and school now out of the question, as well as her whole previous life. Monica looked out the window. Outside, autumn weather raged, drenching the city in cold rain. The weather outside reminded Monica of her current situation. It seemed like just yesterday the sun was shining, and everything was fine, but today the icy wind scared away the last hope with its breath, and she flew away with the migratory birds. We'll manage somehow, Melissa reassured her, noticing the gloomy expression on Monica's face. Where have you been? To distract herself from everyday chores and the sudden breakup with Thomas, Monica found a small job online and spent a few hours a day writing advertising reviews on various websites. It didn't bring in much profit, but Melissa's pension and child benefits somehow kept Monica's family afloat. The elderly woman took care of Nicholas and Raphael. That's what Monica decided to name the twins. Grandma Melissa fussed over them as if they were her own grandchildren. Taking care of the children had a positive effect on her. She seemed to have rejuvenated by 10 years, stopped complaining about the pains in her lower back that had previously plagued her, and overall blossomed and looked better. I thought about it a bit, and here's what I decided. One evening, Melissa said, sitting with a newspaper in her chair. Maybe your ancestors were black. How about that hypothesis? Monica paused from the keyboard and smirked. My ancestors? Black? She responded skeptically. Where from? Nonsense. But Melissa was serious and sternly looked at her former charge. Well, don't say that, she continued. Here, let's say, there was a writer. His great-grandfather was black, but he turned out fair-skinned. Or there's an actor, can't remember his name, he also has a black father, but he's white, and his children turned out dark again. Melissa's arguments didn't convince Monica too much, and she waved them off. Writers, actors, she chuckled, they also found someone to compare themselves to. And anyway, I'll never know who my parents were. Melissa shook her head and immediately slapped herself on the forehead, as if remembering something important. Oh, it completely slipped my mind. She exclaimed, pulling a box of newspapers from under the chair. Where is it here? And the old lady began to rummage through the contents of the box, rustling the papers loudly. Here, I found it, she shouted, handing Monica an old issue of a local newspaper. There's a little article on the last page, read it. Monica reluctantly took the newspaper, opened the last page, and skimmed through the small print. Here, Melissa pointed with her finger, indicating a small column at the very bottom. Very interesting material. The article told the story of some elderly local resident who had lost her daughter. According to her, her daughter drowned in the river when she was just over 20. And she left behind a little child who was with her on the day of her mother's death. By the time the rescuers and the police arrived at the scene, the child was already gone, and this woman asked everyone who knew anything about it to respond. Why are you showing me this? Monica asked Melissa. What does it have to do with me? The old woman shrugged and smiled. I don't know. I was just going through old newspapers and magazines and came across this article from 20 years ago. Maybe she's looking for you, she cautiously suggested. After all, you were found by the river. I think you should visit this woman and find out everything. Monica looked at the newspaper again. Lolita, she read the woman's name. And she lives nearby. Just in case, Monica wrote down her number and leaned back in her chair, not knowing what to think about all this. After waiting a few days, she made the difficult decision to call Lolita to arrange a meeting. She suggested meeting at a cafe, but it turned out that the elderly woman had not left her home for a long time due to illness, so Monica had to go to her. Lolita lived in a small apartment on the ground floor, the windows of which overlooked a large, trash-filled vacant lot. The old woman moved around the house in a wheelchair, and upon seeing the girl, she began to examine her carefully. You look so much like my Selena, she said in a trembling voice. Have you finally been found? Lolita pulled out a yellowed photograph in a plastic frame from an old sideboard. Here, take a look, she said, handing it to Monica. She really looks like you. Monica looked at the photograph and felt like she was looking in a mirror. The photo depicted her, only her hair was not black but light, and her hairstyle was short. This is Selena, my daughter, explained Lolita, tapping her thin finger on the glass of the frame. And you, it turns out, are my granddaughter. Tell me everything, Monica asked the old woman, trying to speak as gently as possible. This is very important to me. It's a long story, the old woman said in a creaky voice. I hardly remember everything, it was so long ago. So listen. Monica held her breath, and Lolita began to tell her what her mother was like in life. Selena was a flighty and fickle girl. After high school, she went to university to study architecture. And during her studies, she met a guy. The guy's name was Vincent. He was black and came here from Rwanda for his studies. Selena taught him to speak our language, and over time, she fell in love with him. And Vincent fell in love with her. And they even planned to move to Africa together. Lolita and her now deceased husband tried to dissuade their daughter from this union with a foreigner, but Selena did not want to listen and insisted that after her studies, she would go to Africa together with her beloved. As time went on, and Selena's parents saw that their daughter's attraction to Vincent did not diminish but rather grew stronger, they decided to intervene in their relationship. Selena's father intercepted Vincent at the university, took him away, and beat him severely, after which he forbade Vincent to see his daughter, promising that next time he would finish him off for good. But Vincent turned out to be a decent guy. He did not resist Selena's father and just smiled. "Your daughter is pregnant with my child," he said, wiping the blood from his split lips. "Someday her child will know about it." Upon learning this, the father became even angrier and ordered his daughter to have an abortion, but Selena refused. Then her father kicked her out of the house altogether. Selena left, and her parents didn't see her again until her body was found in the river and it was announced that she had taken her own life. Vincent's fate remained unknown. All Selena's parents knew about him was written in their daughter's notebook. There was Vincent's address, his photo, and the word "love" written by his hand. "I knew Selena had a daughter," said Lolita, staring fixedly at one point. A stroller with a doll was found on the shore, but the child was nowhere to be found. "I was very scared at the time and didn't make any noise." The old woman wiped away her tears and shook her head for a long time, as if trying to ward off heavy memories. "My husband died almost immediately after this tragedy. His heart stopped. And I was paralyzed. Now I haven't been able to stand up for almost 20 years. Lolita approached the sideboard again. "Here," she handed Monica the tattered notebook. "It's all that's left of your parents." Monica took the notebook and put it in her pocket. "I'm sorry it turned out this way," she guiltily said, getting up from the couch. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I'll come by again sometime." Monica hastily said goodbye to her grandmother and rushed out of the apartment. Her heart was beating loudly, and tears blurred her eyes. After consulting with Melissa, Monica decided to find her father. After saving up the necessary amount for a ticket to Rwanda and obtaining a visa, she immediately set off. She left the children at home with Melissa. The twins were too young for such a long and difficult journey. And besides, Monica didn't know what kind of reception awaited her in a foreign country. Upon arriving in the capital of Rwanda, Monica struggled to find Vincent's house, and as soon as she approached its gates, she was blocked by a huge guard. "Not allowed," he said in English. "Unauthorized entry is prohibited." Monica pulled a photo of her father and her children from her pocket and showed it to the guard. "Daughter," she said, pointing her finger at the photo of her father, then at herself. "I'm his daughter." The guard studied the photos, then communicated with someone on his radio and nodded after a brief dialogue. "Come," he ordered, waving his hand. "He's waiting." The guard escorted Monica through the marble-paved courtyard, past the fountain pool, and led her into the living room. The house seemed like a palace from a fairy tale to Monica. Several huge chandeliers sparkled and shimmered under the ceiling, while the walls and floor were decorated with mosaic. Monica took a few cautious steps, and the guard told her to stop. "Leave us," someone's low voice said, and Monica saw a large man in a white shirt and white pants coming towards them. It was Vincent. His face looked just like in the photo, but his hair had turned gray and was cut short. Monica pulled out the photo from her pocket again. Vincent approached her, and the girl silently handed them to him, trembling like a leaf. "You look so much like your mother," Vincent said, studying his daughter's face. "I knew I would meet you someday." He approached Monica and hugged her, and she buried her face in his shoulder and cried. "I am a fruit merchant," Vincent said, when he and Monica sat at the table near the pool. "My fruits go to India, China, Japan. Even in America, they know me." He took a ripe banana from the vase and showed it to Monica. Monica had never seen such bananas before, large, with shiny skin and an incredible aroma. "We don't have these," she confessed to her father. "It's not just a banana, it's a miracle." Vincent smiled contentedly and then became more serious. "I want to trade with your country," he declared, staring at his daughter. "Bananas, passion fruit, tea, potatoes. I have a lot of excellent goods for your country." Monica listened to her father and smiled. He seemed somehow close and dear to her. She stayed with him for a week. Vincent told her about trading, and they decided to open a small company in Monica's hometown. "If everything works out, we'll expand nationwide," Vincent shared his plans. "Then you'll be the owner of all my assets and you'll manage them as you see fit." Monica didn't know whether to be happy about it or not, silently nodding. "Why me?" she suddenly asked, catching him off guard. "Don't you have any other children?" Vincent looked at her bitterly and lowered his gaze. "My son and wife died in a car accident 5 years ago," he said in a voice that sent shivers down Monica's spine. "Now you're all I have left." "I'll do everything in my power," Monica promised. "You'll still be proud of me, Dad." Returning home, she rented several premises with her father's money and hired truck drivers. Monica got seriously involved in building the company. Time passed. The business expanded every year. Hundreds of trucks transported fruits and vegetables to different cities. Her father visited her several times, doted on his grandchildren, and was happy to have close relatives whom he loved dearly. One day, when Monica was sitting in her office signing documents, someone quietly knocked on her door. "Come in," she shouted, expecting it to be one of her employees. Imagine her surprise when she looked up and saw Thomas shifting from foot to foot. "I came to talk," he mumbled. "Today a truck with fruits arrived at our hospital. They said it was from you." "Well, yes, so what? I wanted to do something nice for your patients." "Is that so bad?" Thomas shook his head and pursed his lips. No, it's all good. I came to talk about something else. Our children." Monica, not believing her ears, first let out a loud sigh, then burst into laughter. "What did you say?" she exclaimed, putting her hand to her ear. "I didn't mishear." "You said, our children, dot." Thomas blushed, shook his head. "No, they're my children," Monica said, calming down. "You walked away from us, remember? Do you want to talk about that?" Thomas jumped, turned sharply, and rushed out the door. Monica returned to her documents, trying to distract herself from the conversation with her ex-husband. Someone knocked on the door again. This time the knock was loud and impatient. Expecting it to be Thomas again, Monica approached the door and was about to lock it. But then an unfamiliar man in a leather jacket burst into her office and handed her some papers. "Hello," he said, out of breath. "I'm your new driver. They told me you need to sign the route sheet." Monica took the paper and looked at the bearded face of the stranger. "Martin." Monica asked incredulously, recognizing her old shelter friend in the bearded man. Martin? Is that you? The guy, also recognizing Monica, broke into a smile and nodded. What a meeting, he exclaimed, grabbing her and pulling her into a hug. And you, I see, have changed a lot. And all for the better. He looked at Monica for a long time and kept laughing. I've been less lucky in life than you, Martin said, sitting down at the table and pouring himself some water. Can't find a job anywhere. Barely have anything to live on. All my hopes are on you. Monica quickly signed the route sheet and promised to arrange for him a higher salary. Maybe we should have dinner tonight? Martin suggested, getting up. Oh wait, never mind, you're the boss. He smiled sheepishly and made a little bow. And married too, I bet, he added, looking for the ring on Monica's finger. Or maybe not married after all. Monica, leaning back in her chair, playfully brushed a strand of hair from her face. Maybe we should have dinner, she teased Martin. Tonight at 7 p.m. at the Wave restaurant, don't be late. Martin nodded, waved to Monica, and dashed out into the hallway. Oh, Martin, Martin. Monica sighed, sorting through documents. I once loved you, you know, and you, clueless as ever, never even knew. For some reason, Monica felt like confessing this to Martin and seeing his reaction. I can't wait for tonight, Monica smiled and started signing the documents. And then there was dinner at the cafe, a stroll in the park, and many more evenings and walks. And later on, a magnificent wedding where the proud father led his beautiful daughter to the altar, and her two tan-skinned little boys carried their wedding rings on pillows. Monica was happy. Everything in her life had turned out just right, albeit with obstacles and pitfalls, but in the end, everything was good. She was married to the love of her life. She had lovely children, a caring father, and the kindest nanny. And she didn't need anything more to be happy.